Okie dokie. I'll just pause for a couple of minutes because it's highly probable that nobody has found me yet.
I've found you.
Just found me. Oh, what a great start to the week, mate. Good.
Yeah,
What do you?
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what
Whether,
was an impressive start for you. You were the only one saying that you thought the RBA lowering interest rates was horse manure, was the way
yeah.
you put it.
Did I say that?
Well, pretty much.
Well, I actually traded it, but I'm a little bit out of the money at the moment. I put a limit order because I thought that exactly what happened would happen. And the only thing that hasn't happened so far is they haven't kind of got back into the swing of things in that the Aussie should be falling. Not because they haven't raised the interest rates, because that's the reason for the rally, of course, but because at the end of the day, nothing's changed. And
Yeah,
before that, the Aussie was under extreme pressure, new lows, etc., etc.
yeah.
So my read was that no, they won't raise interest rates, and we will get a rally. So I put a limited entry order short here, which was triggered, and we got slipped by 8 pips, of course. And now we're coming back to that entry, hopefully to that entry and beyond. But the fact that we haven't done that quickly is of some concern, and maybe I'm just on the wrong chariot here. I don't know. But anyway, I thought it was
Yeah.
worth a try.
Yeah, I mean it's the Aussie may. I mean, it's going to be also to do with the trade scenario, the trade issue, isn't it? We've seen,
Sure.
looking at this FTSE 100, it's a lot more stable than I presumed it would be. And yes, I have to say, I also want to short on the FTSE, but I want it to just creep up a little bit more, and I wonder whether the Aussie may well end up being a short. Whether it's when the UK session opens up, we actually start to see some genuine price movement, and that's what drags it down, or whether it needs to go a little higher is another question. But is that your stop loss, that red line?
Yeah, probably should be up here, but I thought
It's a
if I'm
tricky one,
wrong,
isn't it?
I'm going to be wrong by a long way here, probably.
Well,
So
possibly. I mean, the only other possible scenario is that it does actually move forward, but to that level, and then starts to collapse, because it did provide some resistance previous to now.
yes, that's
Um,
right. If it
so
gets through here, I'll still be on the lookout for short. But
yeah.
yeah, look, I'm still in the race, so
Yeah,
we,
still in the race, and nothing to worry about yet. UK market hasn't opened up, and we might start to see a little bit of equalising of.
well, I think we'll see pretty quickly what the result's going to be here.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what I think. That's what I do think.
yeah.
But
Do you know
anyway,
what I like
yeah,
your short? Do you know one thing about your short as well? Is when I see a decisive bar that closes above a resistance point, I would look at that resistance point as a potential test, a retest, to come back as a retest, and at that point I'd be taking it off, because there's no loss there, and
sure.
seeing if there's any new developments. Because what could potentially happen is if you manage to take it off and it does come through, then it'll probably retest that line again on the way back up again, and then you can re-enter at that particular point. So there are other ways to make this safe, I suppose.
Yeah, the only issue, of course, is that we've suffered slippage, and to get that back at the break-even point is not going to be possible. But yeah, totally see what you're saying, and
Yeah,
I'll consider that if
yeah,
if and when the time happens. But yeah,
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
see what gives. It's the only trade I'm in at the moment. The only one I was really interested in this morning was of having a crack at was that. I'm still keen to get short again, euro pounds. We didn't. I've told you I closed that at this level here.
Nice.
On Saturday morning, I woke up and saw this, and I thought, wow, that was a nice little present from the NFP announcement, because
Yeah,
I was going to close pretty much around about the white line,
yeah,
but yeah, I slept through this, of course. And yeah, nice little present. We
That's
managed to
great,
get it.
man. Yeah, and there's a little trend line. There's a lower trend line as well on the euro pound
Yeah,
on the daily, I think. No, actually oh, in fact, no, if you look on the weekly or even the monthly, I think the monthly.
through here. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, yeah, those points there, and that to me would suggest that that there's a little pattern going on, and it does actually create a pretty obvious bounce point right there.
Yeah, I didn't want to trade through that level without taking something off the table. But when I got the bonus of NFP, I just closed the trade straight away.
Really good trade, man. Do you know, it's interesting what's going on now with the pound, because obviously the pound has rallied somewhat because there is an expectation that Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn are going to get some deal done. But there's going to be a lot of tribulations and trials through that particular period. And I wonder whether we might actually see some euro pickup and a little bit of pound weakness before we actually see that, because there's no real guarantee that they're going to do a deal on the customs union. What Theresa May is supposedly going to be offering Jeremy Corbyn is a temporary customs union. Now, whether he bites on that is the other question. You know, will he go for a temporary customs union? Will he want something which is a little bit more permanent? Will he suggest that that's not good enough anymore, and they need to take some other potential options back to Parliament, which may well be the way forward from here, that they have a group of options and they basically take it back to Parliament and they vote on it in Parliament with this group of options. The referendum keeps coming in and out of focus. You know, the second referendum continues to come in and out of focus, with Jeremy Corbyn saying that if no deal is to get passed, then they will go with a second referendum if there's no majority in Parliament. But it'll only take one of those things probably to get passed that could be significant and bulky enough to take back to the EU, and it would probably sweep the second referendum option off the table. It still confounds me how they've been so short-sighted, and maybe I'm missing something, but I don't understand how they continue to say the reason that they lost so many local councillors was because they haven't delivered on Brexit, when the local councils that won were the ones that were the Remain parties, and they don't seem to be making the connection that people just have changed their mind. But as I say, I may well be missing something. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
So we'll see what.
From where I sit, you're not. The one thing that confounds me and has done all the way through is, why was this ever really a political issue when it should have been in the interests of the country, not the interests of the politicians? And you know, that's just crazy. That they've taken 2 years, 2 deadlines go through, and they've finally decided to come together and say, "Oh, well, actually, this is not about us. This is about the country, and the future of Great Britain. We better do something about this." Wow.
Really. It does. It does make you wonder, doesn't it, mate? It makes you wonder what where their heads are at, and how they can be so out of touch. You know, that's the concerning thing. I mean, politics has taken a very different turn in the last 10 years, I would say, and it's almost maybe longer than 10 years, but because it's almost been since the birth of social media. I know. I mean, I suppose I'm on top of it anyway because of the job. But I know so many more politicians now than I would have ever known before. You know, but previously I would have known the leaders, probably the chancellor. That would be as far as I would go to knowing the politicians of each party. But I know a whole host of different departments now, and it seems that politicians are becoming a lot more celebrity almost. You know, and even to the point that they take part in certain celebrity shows over here, you know, like Celebrity Strictly Come Dancing and things like that. So the role and the stature of a politician has changed substantially. So they almost become more out of touch by default because they step into a different realm where they're a much more protected species than they ever would have been before. Because obviously that the greater their celebrity, the more chance that they've got of being voted in just because people know their name over the person that as the incumbent more than the person that is challenging them. So yes, it's a peculiar kind of combination, really, of the political landscape and celebrity now, and it does mean that possibly that they do become more out of touch than they ever have been before. It
Certainly
shouldn't
that
really be
appears
like
to
that.
be the case. No, it shouldn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't be
Certainly,
like that because really information should have helped them. The information age should have helped them get more in touch with the people. Having the internet means that they should really have been able to reach a lot more people and a lot more opinions, but they don't seem to be asking the right questions. So this, but bringing this back to trading in a way, that the situation with the pound, when I see it at a potential significant support level, as it is on the euro, it would suggest to me that that area would probably remain until there is a little bit more clarity. I think the clarity will certainly see us go through there, but I think a bounce point from here probably is increased. The probability of a bounce point increased. Now, I can't remember if it was today, and it's awful that I can't remember because I listened to it literally half an hour ago, but I can't remember if it's today or tomorrow, but I think it is today where Theresa May does go in with Jeremy Corbyn. And obviously, if she comes out with nothing, the pound is very, very likely to weaken off the back of that. So we should know by the end of today, or the end of tomorrow, or certainly by the end of the week, whether Labour and the Tories are likely to do some sort of deal. And if there is some sort of deal done, and it sounds pretty rosy, then maybe we see some pound strength. But the other thing that we have to consider is that Theresa May is under an incredible amount of pressure from her own party, and obviously across the House as well, because the opposition by definition will be pushing for her to be ousted, just to create some disunity within the party, on the opposite side of the House, and probably force a general election as well. So she becomes a side story, but a very, very prevalent and important one, as she could step down at any point, sending this whole debacle into further confusion. And we know what the market thinks of confusion. So few twists and turns with this one, mate, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the pound at least stabilize at this point, rather than continuing to strengthen. But I think at worst, it could actually weaken from here.
Yeah, interesting. Either way, I think, my sights are set pretty firmly on this area here for euro pound, around about the
Let me see
86
where
mark.
what for upside is that?
I don't know if I'd be willing to trade it to there, but
Yeah.
that's where I'll be looking for the next turnaround point.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And what may well happen is that that does look like a really good level, especially when considering that trade line that you've got in as well, or the trend line that you've got into play there as well. I think around the 86, maybe slightly beyond, I'd be also interested in the short, because if it does become a bit rangy, then that would suggest that point could be the point that it could bounce away from.
Yeah, there's a level through here, of course.
That's the area I really like, but that would take it slightly beyond the trend line, wouldn't it? So maybe not quite as attractive.
86.30, something like that.
So.
Yeah, I don't think I'm interested in going short until that happens.
I mean, what about the pop? Would that be of any interest to you? Dragging itself down to that lower level and then popping for a long, maybe above the. It doesn't quite look like a belt hold, but it's almost a bit of a belt hold.
Yeah, look, wouldn't rule it out. There's probably going to be a few opportunities along the way to take that. As always, when I come back into a range, which we are, I'm looking for a higher low as a bounce off the bottom of that range. But here we've got an untested daily pivot. So down to here is probably where I would be looking for it. If I get an obvious signal in this area, then why not? No reason why not. The only thing I don't like so much about that is it's not really a reversal situation that I'm looking at here just yet. it's more an obvious retracement from the technical point of view that I'm looking at. I don't have a bullish engulfing bar. I don't have a double bottom. I don't have a hammer. You know, I don't have anything that's telling me here that the market is turning or has the strong potential to turn. I have basically a support level that we've just looked at that we're bouncing off. So until I get that double bottom, I'm probably not as confident to go long as I would be if we had a bullish engulfing bar or what do you call morning star or something like that that's telling me that there is a potential reversal here.
Yeah. Well, the FTSE's just opened and it is opened in negative territory and is under pressure. It's an unfortunate scenario, really, because I'd love to go short, but it's just weakened and didn't come back. I'll quickly show you what I've got here. Didn't come back to an area, but it might still do that. So this is the FTSE 100, and we do want the shorts for sure, but we need it probably to fill the gap. Probably would be the best. I'd like the gap to be filled, but use the gap as an entry level for some downside. So it just gave us a little bit more resistance here, but when we look into this area of resistance where the market has come down from, the reason that wouldn't have been an attractive possibility is that the resistance really only exists on this 15-minute chart, and that is just not deep enough a time frame for me to trade it when we have some larger time frames that are, I suppose, you know, to a degree a little bit untested. So need to see some strength come into play with the FTSE. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure, but somewhere around about this 73.26, which is something like 36 pips away from where we currently sit, is where I'd like to go short. So I'm looking at the market in you know, as being weaker. The slight issue with any of this stuff is that when there is fear in the market, the opportunities are pretty sparse. So there may not be the opportunity to go short at these levels, and it might just be that the market takes off. Now, if that is to happen, we will have to wait for the retracement to the bigger level of this daily trend line instead. Now, there was some support down here. And you can probably see why as well. And that support line, and this is the reason I like it up here as well, because it does actually give us a wider time frame. So it comes up here, and when we look at this on a slightly shorter term time frame, it's going to tighten up this level. Look at this on a shorter term time frame, we can see that also is the area where the gap exists. When we bring in a little bit of detail, it's also the area that we can see that this daily pivot exists as well. So there's a lot round here. You know, there's the gap again, and there's the daily pivot. So it's got to come back up to this point, and it's unlikely that I'll wait for a setup. I just will be looking for the market to weaken at that particular price there. But it needs some confidence to get there, and that confidence is probably going to need to have around about 50 pips, which is the average true range on the FTSE is 60, so it may may not pop up to that point, and it might even be that we have the gap here, which is a fairly shallow gap, and the gap actually provides the resistance, and the fear in the market, depending on how strong it is, would generally mean that the levels that you look for just don't get tested. But given the fact that we have to have something of a price and something of a rule that we follow, I don't think I could follow the rule that I'm looking for the fear to continue here, because I don't know how deep the fear is, and I can't guess on that at this particular stage.
We had a good conversation about this last night, didn't we? And you know, my thoughts, which I think probably were dismissed fairly out of hand by most people, are that nothing really changed. The market has reacted to trumping exactly what his thought process was.
Well, do you know, mate? It's funny you should say that, because actually, I actually I suppose read it slightly differently. I actually thought when I'd left the conversation that that there was probably everybody agreeing with you. I certainly heard Julian in agreement, because and I was in agreement because it was a tweet, and a tweet does not constitute a something being set in law. So I was absolutely in agreement with you. I suppose the fear will probably be out of the assumption of what could happen rather than what's actually happened. But I make you right on that. And as I say, from what I was hearing before I left, was that I thought Julian was on pretty much on the same page. Yes, he did say that he saw that there could be, Trump may well have called the high, if you like, but I figured that he was on the same page in saying that it was a tweet.
Inadvertently, yes. It was,
yeah.
Actually, and I questioned him on that, and he said, "No, I'm being seriously." He is saying it was inadvertent. I'm not so sure, because Trump's no fool,
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I didn't realize that was the point you were making, actually, but I completely agree with you. I don't think that would have been inadvertent, and I'll tell you for the reason why is that Trump is desperate, if you like, and just looking at this market, it's having a fairly decent flourish right now, so we may well get our price here. Trump is desperate to control what happens with the Fed, and his desperation brings him to the point that what he wants the Fed to be doing is lowering interest rates. Now, one bullet in Trump's gun, if you like, is the Chinese deal, because if he can, put the Chinese deal at jeopardy and effectively force the markets lower, then it could potentially mean the Fed will have to start using their ammunition to sort out the situation with it. So I agree with you, mate. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is just some sort of clever or not, but some sort of Machiavellian play by Trump to actually force the Fed into doing something that he wants them to do.
Yep. The only thing that I thought, and I do believe that's probably the case, but the only thing I did think is that he's not playing with kindergarten people, he's playing with very smart operators.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if it comes back to bite him in the bum, as I said. I
completely agree.
I think it's a
completely
power
agree.
play that he may not be able to back up.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we look through history of Trump's deal making, that we'll see that his aggressive stance many times results in exactly what he wants, but maybe not in equal proportion. But I bet there's some big deals that he messed up because of his stance as well. So I think you're absolutely right, and it could be is one of those. It could go one of two ways. Is he playing with fire? When not only is he playing with fire when he's taken on the Chinese, because they're a much bigger player than he's probably had to deal with in the past. Well, for sure, that's the case.
And he's potentially giving them credit for. Yeah.
Yes, and he's given them credit for. But the other aspect is he spreading himself too thin by fighting on two fronts if he's taken on the Federal Reserve and China at the same time? Because there's no question that Donald Trump and the Fed have got some relationship issues, if you like. They're not on the same page most times. And Donald Trump seems to be, and who knows why, but he seems to be ramping up right now his aggressive stance, and it could be because the Chinese deal is in focus and is getting ready. And I did, as I say, I did read some of the aspects of the deal, which didn't sound great for Trump. And I wonder whether he's having second thoughts. I wonder whether he is just trying to take on the Fed and ruffle some feathers. I wonder whether it is just his style. I mean, there's so many different things. There's so many different reasons. It could just simply be because he's unhinged. Who knows? But what we do know is that he's done it, and when Donald Trump starts to raise his head, one of two things can happen, and the probably most dangerous and worrying scenario is the one that you allude to, is that could he get himself tangled into knots here?
We will see. And I'm as always, I'm absolutely fascinated by this presidency, and sometimes I laugh, Sometimes I shake my head, but all times I'm entertained by it, and I think it's absolutely incredible. The one thing I would say about Donald Trump today is take everything aside, take politics aside, take trade deals aside, take whatever you want aside. I saw him today in probably one of his finest moments, I thought. Of course, he didn't write the speech, but well, maybe he did have a little bit to do with writing the speech. But when he and I was watching this live this morning on television, when he awarded Tiger Woods the what is it, Medal of Freedom, I think it was, which is
Yeah.
the highest award that a civilian can be bestowed.
Yes.
Well, what a great wrap up of Tiger Woods' achievements and career it was. As I say, I'm sure he didn't write it, but he delivered it very, very well, and it was a very, very moving moment. I mean, Tiger Woods is a golfer. I love golf, and there's been probably one person in history who has gone anywhere near Tiger Woods' achievements, but he's possibly going to catch him as well, which is just amazing after what he's been through. Incredible.
Who's that? Who's the other person?
Jack Nicklaus.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're going to catch him. Yes, yes.
I don't think he will, to be fair, but you know, I didn't
I mean,
think he'd ever come back either, and he has.
The fact that it's a different era, does that make a difference as well? I mean, is it been tougher for Tiger Woods to achieve?
Look, without a doubt,
Yeah.
No question. And I think, unfortunately, when you read history, that never is part of the equation. But
No.
yeah, look, it's far. And mind you, he's created his own competitors or his own opposition by being as good as he is.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to go out and get him, right? And he's modelled, or a lot of golfers have modelled themselves on his fitness regime. Number one, you know,
Yes.
golf in the days of Nicklaus was turn up half an hour before your game, maybe have a few putts on the green, go in the clubhouse and have a rum or a schooner before you tee off, and then get in the clubhouse when you're finished and party on. You know,
Yeah, I mean, is it the case that back in those days that effectively, as long as you trained a little bit with your fitness, actually you had a huge advantage, and because the majority of them didn't, then golf actually took a little bit of a, or could take a little bit of a secondary importance. Whereas, as you say, with Tiger Woods, they're all at it, so it makes the playing field on that particular front a lot more level.
Yeah, look, the Playboy lifestyle of professional golfers hasn't gone completely. They still enjoy the top ones, of course. There are many who try and many who fail, but the ones at the top are enjoying a very, very nice lifestyle. Don't get me wrong, but their attitude and their commitment to the game is far greater than it was before. The stakes are much higher too, I've got to say. You know, the prize money is incredible. The adulation that goes with it, the as you were saying before, like the politicians, you know, they're pretty much rock stars these days.
Yeah,
because of all the exposure. And yeah, look, you've just got to take your hat off to Tiger Woods. What an incredible person.
Yeah, yeah. Well, people just love watching brilliance, don't they? And rightly so. And that's was one argument that I would always have for sport, which is one of the reasons I like it so much, is that effectively you are always going to, well, so not always, but the majority of time, the best will be the victor. And the difference with something like art is that it's so subjective that you can get somebody that isn't particularly talented in any respect, but because they have other qualities of being able to sell what it is that they've got, then they will be victorious over people that may be more ethical, maybe providing better products, maybe producing better product, maybe more gifted. But with sport, the most gifted tend to be the victor. Because it is effectively one against another, and it's you know, it's not subjective. You can't say, well, he should have won, so we'll give it to him, or they should have won, or she should have won, so we'll give it to them. It's the you know, the best boxer in history, you know, being I suppose arguably Muhammad Ali was victorious more often than not. The best football teams, the best golfers, the best tennis players, they tend to be genuinely the best over a long period of time, which is why they win most tournaments.
Yep, too true. And if we could trade on golf, and you'd bought Tiger Woods in 30 years ago, you'd be doing pretty well right now.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, they've got this thing called Football Exchange over here now, so you can actually trade a footballer these days.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, you can buy the footballer, and you can buy and sell the footballers. So yeah, so actually we may well be going. I mean, it's quite a new concept, but we might start going towards that. I'm sure the buy and hold strategy with footballers would be a pretty good strategy. I think if you kind of looked around at some young players, I think most people are probably get caught up in the players that are already up there, and they'll buy people like Messi and Aguero, and probably not have a great deal of room for maneuverability. But if you bought some young players as part of your portfolio, and they turn into the Tiger Woods of their field, or the Messis of their field, then you could probably make quite a tidy sum, as long as you did the buy and hold strategy, as I say.
Yeah. Whoops. Oh, broken leg. Oh, damn.
Yeah, that's always the problem. But no different to a terrible earnings report, I would suggest.
Yeah, true story. It's all relative, is it not? That's true. Well, should we have a look at currencies, maybe?
Yeah, let's have a look at some currencies. The FTSE is stabilizing without really going anywhere. I'm reticent to get in short here, because we've only really, as I say, got this 15-minute line of resistance, but it is providing some extra resistance here, and I don't want to trade it here. But there is, there's no doubt that there is an opportunity to go short here, but it's just a little bit early. I really want this daily pivot. I want the daily pivot. I want the gap. Somewhere in this zone here is my selling area. And as I say, I'm pretty happy just to put the trade on. I'll be fairly happy to put the trade on. The only issue is it will actually provide the 15-minute bar here. This is the area that I want, somewhere around here. The only problem is that it will provide this 15-minute with a little bit of a breakout, but I'm okay with that, because if it fails at this point, then I would be looking for the next area, and I'm looking on this 4-hour chart, and I'm saying this is my area to go short, which is a decent level along here. This is the area to go short. If it doesn't go short there, then I'll probably go to the next line and go short a little bit higher. Much like the way that we were just looking at the Aussie. I would just continue to look for the shorts in this market until it's proven that I need to go long. But I quite like this point here.
Cool. Let's hope we get there, mate. And we can get into the market. That would be nice.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're only 20 pips away, so it's a much greater chance now. But as I said before, there might be just about enough fear to take it away. But let's look at some currencies, and then I'm going to look across the board at some other indices to have a look at the probability that we are getting some world weakness.
Yep, sure. Rightio. We have talked about euro pound, of course, not really in depth, but I think enough to get an idea of certainly what I'm looking at. And what I'm looking at is a decent retracement. And that retracement will probably be a trend line, maybe a trade line. This is a trade line. This is a trend line. What's the difference? Well, one isn't depicting trend, the other is. This is trend. This is just probably a 4-hour trend trade line rather, which means that it's just got a few points of contact that I'm interested in. The more a line is tested, be it horizontal or otherwise, then the more likely, in my humble opinion, it is to provide a trade. And that's why I call it a trade line. So the trend line is my favorite at the moment, really because it provides us with a confluence of last month's monthly pivot, or even this month's monthly pivot, which is pretty flat, as you can see, and also that trend line. So, and also the figure 86. So I think that's the area where I'll be looking to trade this short. Can I trade it long? That will depend a whole lot on whether the daily pivot's tested today or otherwise. I don't really want to go long unless that is the case, and we'll look into that if and when it occurs. The euro itself, very, very interesting, always is. And I think I commented on this last time it happened, which was a month or so ago, where you've got two bull bars engulfing each other, basically. And of course, only a gap can provide us with that. But it's happened again. Look, I am a little bit bullish, the euro, but I'm not 100% committed to it. And the reason I'm not 100% committed to it is because I don't, again, going back to what I said on the Aussie, I think it was. No, it wasn't. I can't remember what it was. Maybe cable. I don't have a reversal situation here. I've got an indecisive bar here rather than a bullish engulfing bar. Don't have a double bottom as such. You could probably stretch the friendship and call that on a smaller time frame a double bottom. If that's the case, then you're probably entitled to think that this higher low here is tradable. Look, we pointed this out last night. Julian jumped on that straight away and said that's a higher low. And I agree with him. It is a higher low. What I don't like about it is, as I've just said, I don't really have a signal here telling me that the reversal is yet on. It may be that I ignore this and I completely miss the move if it comes, but I think there's going to be another opportunity, and that's what I'll be looking for. So from here, what would I really like to see? Well, I'd really like to see a genuine double bottom, to be absolutely fair. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, the next thing, or the lesser value, but probably acceptable thing that I would look at would be a break of this area. So monthly pivot break, trend line break, come back and retest it. And even then, I wouldn't be that keen. What would make me keen is when we get back into this range. And this range we've been following since when November last year, right? So by me, this is the range that we've been in. We've had 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 false breaks of here. That's a very good sign to me that we're going to break to the high side. Pardon me. Because we just cannot go lower here. We're trying, and we keep failing. This now is the real big test, and the real big test because, Ash, you'll remember this. We put this in months and months ago, thinking that we might have a head and shoulders on our hands, and I actually took this off probably a month or so ago, but now I put it back on because look what it's just continuing to stay inside that range. And as you know, I love ranges no matter where they occur. I love them. So this to me again is another test of the bottom of that range, which at this point has failed. So when I look at this and I see what I'm loosely describing as 3 little Indians here, and I see the top of this range again, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this is going to here. Maybe to here, maybe to here, maybe to here, but I think it's going to the top of the range. And it wouldn't surprise me if it bursts through the top here. So it could happen quickly is what I'm saying. And that's why I may even miss this entry if I'm not considering this to be a reversal situation, only because of the technical signal isn't there for me. So it's a little bit curly, but I just need to wait until I get what I want. And then I look at that chart, which is the 4-hour chart, and wow, that would have been a reasonable candle to trade, this one here. When was that? Friday, yeah. I don't trade Fridays as a rule. Certainly wasn't for other charts. But here we are at the monthly pivot. I'd love to see a pullback here and another higher low to get me into this. I don't really consider a short at this point, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility either, of course. In particular, look where we are. You know, we've broken above the monthly pivot already this month, back below it, now retesting it. This would be in some people's eyes, I won't exclude myself from that, a reasonable position to take trading down to the next support level, which would be here. So, you know, it's not clear cut where this is going next, in my humble opinion. And I think probably the best thing for me is to wait until it is. But, you know, funnier things have happened than me seeing an entry here that just looks impossible to ignore. And if that were to be the case, then, you know, I'm not ruling anything out. Potential to trade this short, untested daily pivot, why not? I'm not against it, but it's not kind of the direction I'm headed, if you know what I mean. I'm a part-time bull, and we'll see what happens from here. It's not crystal clear. Now, cable was spoken about, and I can't help but see this break and retest. It's not really evident on a daily chart. Maybe it is evident on a daily chart. Yes, it is, actually. So we've had a break of a daily trend line. We've had a retest of a daily trend line at the weekly pivot. Why wouldn't I be considering this to go long? Well, I would have to be considering it to go long. The problem here is you've got a fairly big mountain to climb. I see this area as a short area at the 132 mark, and to trade into that, don't think so. There's not enough reward here, I don't think, on the basis of what I'm seeing. But definitely, you've had a big statement here by this candle on Friday, which was the NFP announcement. Had a retest of the weekly pivot and that confluence area, and now I would not be surprised at all if we just get this follow through, but only to here for me. What happens thereafter, I'm not 100% sure, of course, but I'll be looking for a trade in that vicinity in the next, well, maybe a couple of days. We shall see. What's the Aussie doing? It's tantalizingly coming back towards my entry, which, for those of you who weren't in earlier, I traded this on the news, anticipating that we would not get an interest rate cut. So I set a limit entry order here, short, thinking that, okay, we won't get the cut, but we will have probably a statement that's not going to be too bullish, and therefore logic would lead me into the direction of the previous momentum and trend, which of course was short. A couple of sticky points around that, in that we also had retail sales this morning, which were better than expected. We also had, I can't remember the other number, both of them better than expected. And of course, we didn't have an interest rate cut. So that's why the Aussies rallied, as I anticipated anyway. But getting the return to trend now is the sticky bit, because we've got good numbers and a not so dovish statement, I suppose. Look, a couple of things you could do here. If you were in this trade with me, you could just cut your losses now, which are only minor, and say, well, okay, this is not going the way I anticipated it would. Or you could wait for your fate to be sealed by whatever happens next. And really, you know, to my way of thinking, it's more a 50-50 call now than it certainly was earlier. I was pretty clear, and I think I've traded maybe 6 limit entry orders in my entire trading career. So that's how unusual this is for me. But I was very clear on what I thought would happen, and only half of that has occurred. So the choice now is I've only traded at small risk, so I'm not really concerned. But the choice is now mine to say, well, okay, it hasn't happened, or say it hasn't happened yet. And they're the two options I've got. I'm choosing the latter because, as I say, I've only put a very small amount of risk onto this for obvious reasons. If I've only traded half a dozen in my life, why would I be super confident it's going to work out this time? We shall see. And if you have traded this with me, as I put it out this morning, then the two options. But it is pretty much a 50-50 call from here, whether the stop, which is up here at 70, 70, 50, 62 from memory, something like that. Yeah, 70, 62 is the stop loss. So still like 30 odd pips away. And I don't know why I'm really giving this. I'm not giving it up at all. I'm just pointing out the reality that I think there's a 50-50 call here. And I really wouldn't expect it to go too much higher today. We've tested DR3 after all. We are coming back off that. So I'm hanging in there. If we can get a result here, happy days. But as I say, it's nowhere near. I'm nowhere near as confident on it as I was when I placed the trade. Yen. Now yen's interesting, Ash.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I can't
very.
make up my mind on it really. I know you were a yen bull.
I am a yen bull, yeah.
And I think you've got a few friends as well. And I want to be a yen bull. I'm just not. I'm just. What I am is confused. And I'm confused because I think the yen's had quite a few opportunities to rally in the face of uncertainty over the past, or you name it, certainly 6 weeks or so. Yet it hasn't. And my question then becomes, why hasn't it? And why will it now? So convince me.
Well, I suppose with the yen, this is the month for the yen, and we've only just started the month, I suppose. But there is this uncertainty hanging over the market, and we are seeing it in equities. That equities are, they struggled yesterday. Obviously, they had a huge move to the downside. They're starting to recover somewhat, but there is still this concern out there, and maybe it's going to take this trade issue to be to collapse for the yen to strengthen. But that is certainly one reason that that it would do. But in the meantime, then I guess there may well be some people that would just want to be putting some protection in place, because all of a sudden we do have, if nothing else, some uncertainty out there. That the big thing is,
But that was my
if we
point. Haven't we been in this same boat for a while?
Yes, except for the fact that yes, we have, and to be fair, looking at that, the euro yen has been weakening over the course of
True
the
story.
last few months. So really, the question is, does it go further down from this particular point? And you're looking at euro yen specifically. And if I bring in my euro yen, let's have a quick look at this.
Only because I see that big bullish engulfing bar, and I'm waiting. I don't know why I'm waiting, because there's already a higher low in place. And I know the reason I'm waiting. Actually, the reason is this gap here, which is frightening the market at the moment for whatever reason.
Yes. So this is the euro yen, and yeah, you're absolutely right. That gap is there. Where did that gap exist? It's that one there, isn't it? But let's have a look on longer term time frames. Monthly's not great. Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, the issue really is that we are at some pretty heavy support here, aren't we? And I guess what would be the answer with the yen is that because of the longer term view of this, a little bit of support and a little bit of buying would actually create a much better opportunity. I'm just going to check this trend line here. Yeah, see, I probably wouldn't be interested until we got up here anyway on the yen. But at that point, I do quite like it. So yeah, a little bit of buying into maybe a little bit of buying into this point here. Just coming back to the FTSE, just as a bit of a proxy for some yen strength. The FTSE is so far, after the first hour and a half, first half an hour is fairly stable. It hasn't really gone anywhere just yet. So maybe some easing into a selling zone is what people are really after. There are probably sort of a few people getting into their positions, but they're probably a little bit early. And what we should be looking for is maybe just the pressure to the downside, just to ease a little bit, and let the buyers come back into play, and then look for the shorts. But same with the FTSE, and as I say, same with the yen. I still see the yen as a decent opportunity, but I do think that the price is wrong probably here. And looking at these charts, it's come up. It's and there is some support here. So for it to bounce away from this point wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world.
Yeah, I think it's a buy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a
I'm a
buy,
short
and
term.
maybe
I'm a short-term trader, so
yes. I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right. Looking at this 4-hour chart, there may well be some support along this level here. So yeah, a buy into this area, but then I'd be very concerned with holding onto positions. I suppose my take on the yen is that I don't see anything breaking to the upside against it, and that would mean that the levels and lines to try and get some shorts on would be really good areas. But these points here would be too early.
yeah, look, like the rest of the market, or as it appears the rest of the market, gaps spook me, and I just don't like to trade around them. So I don't think I would buy it until we got through there. And when we get through there, we are going to be at that trend line just about. So it's going to be a no trade for me, I think.
Yeah.
Another one that's interesting is Aussie Kiwi, really for no other reason than we've had an interest rate announcement on the Aussie today, which was a beat, if you like, if there's such a thing on an interest rate announcement. And we've got the Kiwi doing exactly the same thing tomorrow, in that we've got an interest rate statement. Both were or have been heralded as interest rate reduces, and the Aussie got into favour. As I said, was it last Wednesday or Thursday? I think I said the buzz around town is that the economists are calling for an interest rate cut today. Didn't happen. Is the same going to happen with the Kiwi tomorrow? And is now the Aussie Kiwi too over extended to trade that? It's a tough one. I was keen on this long, actually. Maybe I should have traded this long instead of what I did. No, I'll stick with what I did. But I'd like to get into this long because I don't see that the Kiwi has got any hawkish tone about it tomorrow. Actually, let me have a look at the Forex Factory. Tomorrow, we've only got for the Kiwi everything around the interest rate. Today, on the Aussie, we had retail sales a beat, trade balance a beat, cash rate a beat. So no mystery as to why the Aussie rallied at all. And I'm kind of wishing these things didn't happen, because it does add weight to the Aussie long story right now, which is not in my best interest, of course. So I'm still thinking Aussie Kiwi long, but I'd want to see a decent retracement now before I got into it. And they're not forecasting a cut tomorrow on the Kiwi at all, but they're also predicting that the statement's going to be extremely dovish. It's very interesting, and I think I'd have to stay out of that one as well. I'm talking myself out of all of these potential trades, but you can't trade that. Or sorry, I can't trade that. You can probably trade it as a scalp down to the short side, but I couldn't possibly look to trade this long until we got back, maybe at least 50% into here. I wouldn't have thought. So not interested. You, mate, any interest?
What, in the Aussie?
Aussie Kiwi.
No, do you know? I thought the Aussie Kiwi was quite interesting, because I know Jules was always talking about the Aussie Kiwi as a potential buying opportunity, but that looks to me that it's it's got a little bit more dangerous, isn't it? I mean,
it has now, yeah.
That huge bar, I saw this. I had a look at the Aussie Kiwi and I saw that bar, and I just thought, wow, that's got to be avoided. That's now that's got to be avoided. It's got far too dangerous. I mean, what created this?
Oh, this was the Aussie interest rate this morning. Well, not the interest rate. Sorry,
Um,
it was a combination thing. You mean this
this one
bar here?
here, that was the 4
Oh,
hour.
sorry.
Yeah.
You're on your chart. I'm watching my chart.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the that bar that we had on, when was that? Yesterday, was it Monday? Yeah, as we started the weekend again, we just opened up the very first 4 hour bar of the new week.
What
That
chart are
just
you looking at?
Aussie Kiwi. I'm looking at the 4 hour. Have you not got the same bar as I've got?
No.
Oh, okay. I wonder what that did. I mean, I have to say I saw that and I thought that that just would not
That's the
be.
first bar of the week. I've got a doji bar there. That opened.
Yeah, I have got a doji bar, but it seems to have a huge range.
What's your high and low?
The high is 1.0565. The low being 1.0283.
Wow.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, that can't be right.
It doesn't
I've
look
got a
right,
low
does it?
of 1.0531.
Yeah, it doesn't look quite right.
I'll just check another broker.
Just incidentally, the FTSE as we speak is now starting to move into fairly interesting territory here. Let's just watch this on a slightly different chart here. You can see how close now the weekly pivot, the daily pivot is. It's within 12 pips. Now, if this gets up here in the next couple of minutes or the next 5 minutes, I'm going to trade it. If it takes another 20, meaning that this would be the hourly bar close, then I'm going to wait for another hour just to see whether we get some resistance. But what I'm looking for is to come up here and jump down within the hour period, anywhere between here and here. So within the next 3 or maybe 4 or 5 pips, I'm going to take this as a short. So it looks like it might get there just at the right time for me. So I'm gonna look for this short. I'm just going to double check something before I do that. Uh, 24. Yeah, it's getting close enough, but not just yet. It's got about another 5 or 6 pips to get to. This might provide resistance, but I want the gap closed, because without that gap closed, it almost almost creates a little bit of an elephant in the room taking the short on. So I want to make sure that gap gets closed up, and I may enter at the gap and not worry too much about the daily pivot. But this gap at least needs to be closed. So let's just put the line in of where this is going to be traded. Just there. So we're 6 pips away. Sorry, mate, to cut you off there. This is just now starting to move.
Stay with it, mate.
It'll take a little while. I'm just going to check. Have we checked the news today? Oh, here we go.
Bits and pieces.
Okay. Just a few more we need here. Well, I don't like it when it goes this slow, because what I want is it to pop forward to that daily pivot. Otherwise, it could just pop up and down. About 3 more. 3 more before it closes the gap. Here we go. Couple of pips here. That's not going to be close enough, unfortunately. Well, maybe not, unfortunately. Maybe it's fine. Let's have a quick look at this on a shorter term time frame. Giving us a little bit more detail. It's just a pip away, actually. It's a pip and a half away from getting in, from getting the close. Sorry, from getting up there. It's a pip and a quarter now. I wonder whether I might just put this on. Now, you guys will be looking on your cash charts. So you're probably looking at around about the 73 for a sell. Come on, give me a little bit of a surge here. Nice bullish bar. Yeah, there's probably enough encouragement there. I'm not sure whether that touched.
Hit 73 on the cash.
It's hit 73 on the cash. I don't think that touched. No, that hasn't touched. I'm going to just wait on that, mate. So may have to come back to it again.
No drama.
I might actually put the order in, and then I don't have to worry about it. So let's look at.
Okay, so those of you who want to follow, it's FTSE 100. It's a sell order.
It's a sell order. I'm gonna do this twice because this is a different account. So this one's going to be at the price 73.26. That looks like 73.27 actually. 73.27 for that one. Let me just bring the levels in. I'll bring the levels in just while the oh, it's showing trade levels. That's fine. It's just there. Now let's do it on a tradable account for you guys as well. So the numbers are going to be slightly different on this one. So we're looking at 27, which is 4 above. So we're looking at 73 on this one. Right, and so we are looking for pending order, sell limit, and 73.73 is the price that I'm going to go in at, which is actually just where it did touch, didn't it? Well, I got entered into that one. I was a little bit earlier. It's just starting to come off a little bit now, but we'll see. We'll see if we can get one more pop to the upside. If we can get the pop to the upside, then we can take this trade. And it may well do. I mean, the thing is with this is that it might be retracing here and it looks a bit late, but it could just come back to this point and then just get a little bit more juice to the upside. So we may still get triggered in, but I can't really justify at that point because the gap hasn't really been closed. So the gap does need to be closed really before trading this. And the daily pivot's just beyond as well, where I suspect, if it pops up, then that will provide some further resistance, and this will provide further resistance. Now, as for stops, there is obviously going to be kind of different ways that that this can be played. So I suppose we could talk about what would be the conventional way to get a stop on. I'm not going to trade it the conventional way, but there's no point in you guys not doing that because you won't be around while I'm managing this. So let's talk about stops. I mean, that's if anybody's trading it, of course. Maybe there's no desire for this, but the area that that we will look at again. So I'm all in for the short, regardless of if it goes higher or not. So if it doesn't go short here, then I will look probably to the monthly pivot for my next short. So that would mean that if you guys are thinking about stops, then just above what would be the monthly pivot. Let me just bring this on the cash so you can make the same. Yeah, so it'll still be above the monthly pivot. The monthly pivot seems to be the sensible place, because if it goes beyond that point, the trend may well turn around for a period, given that we have also this trend line here. So your entry is 73.73, and your stop placement is going to be somewhere around about the 74.33, I guess. 74.33 would be about right. Yeah, so 74.33 for stop, 73.33 for the entry. So that is that, mate. The order is in the market, and it will either go or it won't. There's no point in me doing anything else. The only price that I would have been prepared to wait a little bit longer for would have been the daily pivot, and that's a little bit higher anyway. So I'm not going to enter just because it hasn't quite touched. I'm gonna wait and see if it either enters or gets to that daily pivot. The other caveat to this will be if this bar ends up not touching but ending up here in the next 10 minutes, because that's going to look fairly bullish and suggest that there could be a little bit more upside, which means that the entry could be a little bit better, because I'm still interested to go short around about the monthly pivot. If it doesn't go short there, then I'll be entering a short up here. Is that right? Let me just double check that. No, that's not right. Yeah, it looks like the monthly pivot will be the last short. So we got two opportunities. Yeah, so it's either going to be monthly pivot and this trend line, or here. They're my two shorts. And all I will do is probably add to my short here, and I'll worry about coming out of it when I come up here. But let's just do it explain it the conventional way for you guys, which is to put your stop at just above the monthly pivot. So that is on, mate. The trade hasn't been triggered, but this one has not been triggered either as yet. Oh, we'll double check that. Yeah, neither trade has been triggered. This one's getting we're within about a pip of being triggered in here.
All right, mate. I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes, see if that has occurred. In the meantime, I'll just go quickly around the grounds and let you guys know what I'm thinking for the rest of the session and probably the day. I'm going to start with, I'm not sure if my screen's showing. Now it is. Okay. Start with Euro Pound. As you would be aware, I'm waiting on a price to get up here somewhere before I can short it again, and maybe looking to trade it up to that level. But at this point in time, answer is no. I've got to have a daily pivot test before I would do that. So that's not going to happen until the daily pivot is tested. Euro's had a little bit of selling coming off the monthly pivot. I don't suppose there's any surprise there to anybody. We're being held up at the weekly pivot at this point in time. Again, we've got an untested daily pivot sitting here. That's always in my calculations and my thought process. So I don't see a trade there right now. What I do see, however, is this particular scenario. So if perchance the current bar were to close pretty much where it is, let me just check before I make that statement. Oh, it's so close. What I would consider is if the candle were to close here and a bull bar comes back and retests the trade line, then I would consider a short underneath that candle, targeting the low of the day as first take profit area. So my counsel will, as always, will be do not trade through that support level. As weak as it may look, it is in fact the low of the day, and that for me is something that needs to be considered. So entry here, profit here. Target. Yeah, I suppose down here at, let's say 111.30, 111.33 actually, 111.33. That would be a decent target. Am I committed to the short here? No, but if it were to be that we get that particular scenario, and it looks like it's gone too far now for that to be the case, because what happens now is we have to take a candle going back to there, becomes too big to trade to this area without profit. So that's probably not going to happen now. In fact, this bar looks as though it might even take on the daily pivot the way it's going. So that's unlikely to occur. Cable is also selling off at this point in time. Little bit of a question mark on this one today, and we went through that before. And I really can only see, if you're ballsy enough to trade long from here, then I can see the target area, which is up here, maybe a day, 2, 3 away, who knows. But that's where I'll be starting to look for my next trade on this cross pound, and it would be short, not long. So I'm really not interested at this point unless I get something really compelling to get me into a long here. And look, that may be the case, to be fair. We've come above the daily pivot, back below it. If we were to test the weekly pivot here and then come back above it and retest it, I think that's an excellent place to go long. So it's like weekly pivot, consolidate a little bit, back up here, retest it from above, long there. Happy days. Aussie. Look, as I said, it's now a 50-50 call for mine. We're just about at my entry point where I went short earlier today as a limit entry on the back of the news. I'm sticking with my trade, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least to see this have another crack at this high. I don't know if it can get through it, but wouldn't surprise me if it has another crack at it. I will consider, if we got back, say, to this level here or DR1, taking profit, whereas I wasn't going to take profit before. In fact, I'll call that now. If you are in this trade, there's entry. I'd look to take profit at 70.09, so 0.7009. I'll be taking my first profit if that does come back to that level. I'm actually going to get rid of half of the position at that time as well, because, as I say, I think this can go either way easily today. So 7009 is my first take profit, and I'm going to remove half the position at that point, if we're fortunate enough to get down there, of course. If you're not in this trade, well, to be absolutely frank, I don't know that you should be thinking about it, because I don't see anything here that's compelling apart from the fact that we're retesting this 70.24 level, which was exactly my entry. That's all I see. Pound yen has shot through and gone straight back to this broken, what's that? It's a daily trend line by the look of it. No, 4 hourly. Okay, let's have a look at the 4 hour. So you can see that we're retesting this area here. Pound yen. I was talking about the yen with Ash earlier. I'm not convinced either way here.
Yeah, the pound yen's a tricky one, isn't it? Because of the of the two, the yen providing some potential protection, but then the pound obviously being in focus.
One thing I would say is, if we can, and as always, I'm always looking for false breaks, because most breakouts are false. So if we break this level here, pretty much where we're at, and in concert with the trend line, got below it, same old. If we find support here, get back above the trend line and retest it, that would necessitate me placing a long order. Got to take profit before the pivots and get safe in the market, then let the rest run. That would be the way I'll go there. Aussie Kiwi, I'm now going to leave Aussie Kiwi alone, because it depends a whole lot on what happens tomorrow with the Kiwi as to where this goes. It's overextended because of the Aussie news. Consolidation is probably the most likely event here. We're seeing that at the moment. Maybe a bit of a pullback, but no interest there for me. This one looks absolutely out of my my trade the range textbook, but this was news here, and that lower high, beautiful, look at that. But that was the news event, pardon me, on the 4 hour chart. Very, very tough to trade. And now we have come straight down to the weekly pivot. We're consolidating. It's too far gone today for me to trade it. This one looks a bit interesting. This is dollar yen on a 30-minute chart. You can see how it's hugging the daily pivot here. It doesn't really want to move too far away from it. This seems to be the MO of dollar yen recently, where we go to a level and we just hang there until something else happens. I don't know what that's going to be fair. You can see the amount of time that we spend here just hanging around the monthly pivot. Now we're hanging around the daily pivot. Gap here still too tough for me to call. Sorry, guys. I'd really like to say, look, I've got a firm idea here, but I don't have a firm idea here. Aussie yen, only a couple to go. Kind of interesting before this candle. I was keeping a close eye on this trend line here, again, looking at the false break scenario, but I needed to have a retest here. I guess I got it on a smaller time frame, but I can't enter here. Maybe if we get on the hourly chart, now we've got an hourly bar close, that looks far better. So I'll make this call. If we do get a bullish decisive bar here, or even just a retest of this trend line, place a short underneath that candle and trade it down to the daily pivot. That would be my favored play here. Take profit. Hang on just 2 seconds, I'll measure that. So let's say you're risking about 15 pips. Yeah, I think you want to be taking profit there at 77.63, and then your target becomes the daily pivot. So this is only a short-term trade, very short-term trade. You want about a 13 pip candle, take profit here at 77.63, and then close your trade at the daily pivot. That's Aussie yen. Couple more, I suppose. Euro yen, again, similar to the pound yen I was just talking about. It's too tough to call for me. I'm not interested. Euro CAD, speaking of not interested, we're in the middle of that range and going nowhere. And Aussie CAD's a little bit interesting, actually, because we have broken through this longer term, well, shorter term, long, if you look at it on this basis, channel. And now looking like we want to come back to test it. We've done this before, and we came back inside it. We're a long way from that as I see it, but I'll be keeping my eye on oil for this one. And oil's failed to break through the weekly pivot. I was going to say, had there been a close above the weekly pivot, then I think this would have been a very good sell, but it hasn't done so. And you can see both of them are failing to get through the weekly pivot. So there's no call there from me either. So, guys, that is it. A couple of ideas that I've left you with, but at this point in time, I am hanging, waiting for something to happen. Yeah. How are you going, Ash?
No, we haven't been triggered in, but I'll quickly show you what I'm looking at, which, I mean, it could go either way at this point, and there's a couple of things that that suggest that taking this trade off the table, which I just did suggest that that could be a possibility, but there's a suggestion to me that wouldn't be a good idea, and the reason for that is that this hourly bar didn't take out these highs, so that suggests that the downtrend is still in play here. The reason I'm okay with leaving it here rather than just entering is because the 15 is still in a trend to the upside. So I think the fact that the longer term timeframes have not changed the direction would suggest that we're still looking for downside. But the 15 does suggest that there's a little bit more upside in it, and the daily pivots may well be tested. So I'm okay with this. I don't want to enter any lower than this point, just because of that gap, and because I don't see the point. I don't see the point in entering half a pip lower when there's a gap and there's also a daily pivot there. Now, I might end up ruining those words and missing an opportunity, but as I said before, there's got to be an element of rules that have to be put in place, and how where does that leave us if we bend a rule here and say, oh, it's only a couple of pips? Then
You're playing a different game, mate.
You're playing a different game. What happens next time? There could be trades that are gained and missed. And the thing is, what ends up happening is when you start to shift down is that there's more often than not, it does come down and test the level, and then you lose those extra few pips. So and I made that mistake only last week when I entered a long in the FTSE down here. I actually entered it at this point, and it ended up dipping that little. I wanted it here, and I had my order, but it looked like it might start to spring forward from this point, and I entered, and it did dip down, and I lost out on about 15 pips to the downside, which doesn't seem like an important aspect of this, but to me it is. So I don't really like doing it. I don't really like to change those positions if I can. So I'm gonna hold out in here and risk not being entered, but just going to have to accept that it's better be in. Better to wish that I were in than wish I were out. So I know it's only a half a pip or so, but I don't see why we shouldn't at least find some genuine resistance at either this point or more prevalently the daily pivot. And I am below that, so it's not like I'm trying to get that many that much movement out of this. It's only I'll be entering at still another 4 pips or so below the daily pivot. So I'm going to leave things where they are, mate, and just hope for the best. It has come off around about 10 pips from the original area that it got to. So there is weakness there, and that's also quite heartwarming as well. But as long as it does provide a little bit of a surge here, we should be okay.
Alrighty, mate. We will leave it there then, and thank everyone for their company. We will do it all again tomorrow from the very same
trade time, same trade channel.
Okay, guys, have a great rest of Tuesday. We'll catch up with you tomorrow. Bye for now. See you later, mate.
See you, buddy.